Hi, friends. Today, I want to share a new story with you. Enjoy watching. The young woman in the red apron knelt down beside the old man, gently placing a warm bread roll in his shaking hands. She never asked where he came from or why he looked so tired. Every morning, she just left him a meal, no questions asked. But on the 11th day, everything changed. Four military SUVs pulled up in a perfect line. A soldier stepped out, holding a letter. The bakery went quiet, and when the woman walked out, everyone stood. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where we share tales of kindness and compassion. Let's find out what really happened. On the dusty corner of Santa Isabel, New Mexico, each morning started with the warm smell of fresh bread from Rosie's Bakery. It was nestled between an old pawn shop and an empty gas station. The air smelled like butter, vanilla, and rising dough. Marisol Rivera, 35, had never left this town for more than a weekend. Every morning, before the sun rose over the distant Oregon mountains, she was already in the kitchen, rolling dough, baking bagels, muffins, and the famous cheddar rolls the locals loved. She wasn't loud or flashy, she didn't stay out late after work, but she remembered every customer's birthday. She knew who liked more sugar in their coffee and who wanted peace and quiet. And she was the only one who noticed the old man, his silver hair under a worn hat, his coat dirty and torn, sitting quietly on the bench near the recycling bins at exactly 6:10 a.m. Every day, he never asked for anything, just sat there, his shoulders hunched, as if trying to hide from the world. His eyes weren't empty, but sharp, watching like someone who hadn't trusted anyone in years. At first, Marisol thought he might be waiting for someone, but after 5 days, 10 days, even 3 weeks, he still sat there, never left without a pause, never spoke, but every morning, as she swept the back patio, he would give her a small nod, nothing more. Then one cold Tuesday morning, with frost still on the windows, Marisol stepped outside with a brown paper bag. Inside was a leftover ham sandwich, a banana muffin, and a cup of hot coffee. She didn't offer it to him, she just placed it beside him as she walked past, muttering quietly to herself. Guess the kitchen overdid it today. The man looked at the bag, then at her. His eyes didn't beg or rush, just watched, carefully, as if deciding if this was kindness or a trick. Then he nodded again, a little deeper. The next day, he came back, and so did the paper bag. It became their silent routine, no greetings, no questions, no names, just a bag, a cup, and a quiet nod between strangers. Marisol never told anyone about him. She wasn't sure why she did it. Maybe it was something her father once said about the war, how children would search for food under soldiers' boots. Or maybe it was her memory of being that hungry child after cancer took her mother. Or maybe it was just this, he was hungry, and she knew how to bake. Soon, people started noticing. One Wednesday, while Marisol arranged fresh bagels, she overheard a woman at the coffee counter. "He's back again," the woman whispered, not too loud but enough to hear. "Marisol's running a charity now?" a younger coworker joked as he cleaned the windows. "Or do we give out free pastries to anyone who hasn't shaved in a month?" Marisol didn't answer. She kept slicing the warm loaves, each movement careful, each piece placed as if it meant something important she didn't want interrupted. A few days later, Mr. Raoul, a retired teacher who drank a double espresso every morning, looked out the window and shook his head. "Back in my day, people like that wouldn't hang around decent places, and no one handed out free food just because they looked sad." Marisol smiled politely but said nothing. She didn't stop working, dusting flour onto the next batch of rolls. Only Rosa, the elderly woman who sold lottery tickets down the street, leaned in as she grabbed her usual coffee and whispered, "You've got your mama's heart, you know that?" Marisol paused for a moment. Rosa had known her mother, the woman who used to make soup from leftovers and give it to strangers during cold winters. Marisol didn't remember her face too well anymore, but she remembered her hands, always warm, always working, always smelling like parsley and dish soap. That same morning, the old man didn't show up. Marisol still packed a bag, still brought out the coffee, and still placed it on the bench at 6:10. A gust of wind blew the napkin from the bag. It fluttered across the empty parking lot like a small flag. She watched it drift away. The next day, he didn't come, and the day after that. On the 4th day, Gustavo, the bakery owner, called Marisol into his small office. The room smelled like ink and burnt coffee. He didn't waste time. "Marisol, I know you mean well, but customers are starting to talk. That man makes people uncomfortable." She gripped her apron tighter. He's never asked for anything. He's never come inside. But you're giving him food every day, Gustavo said. This isn't a soup kitchen. She stayed silent, not because she didn't have an answer, but because if she spoke, she might cry. I pay for the food myself, she finally said. It's leftovers. It doesn't come from the store. Gustavo sighed. I'm not saying you should stop, just don't make it so obvious, okay? Leave the food out back or something. Marisol nodded. That night, she emptied the tip jar at home. It wasn't much, just enough to cover a loaf of bread, a coffee, and a muffin every day. She put a few bills in a white envelope and wrote neatly. Covered, 5 days breakfast. No one would ever ask to see it. No one needed to. To Marisol, kindness didn't need permission, just good intentions. A week passed. The bench outside the bakery, the one where the paper bag and coffee cup had rested each morning, was empty. For the first time in nearly 2 months, Marisol made breakfast with no one to wait for it. Still, she packed the bag at 6:10, still placed it on the bench, still watched from the window. No one came. By Saturday, the strong desert wind knocked the open sign sideways. Marisol wrapped up the untouched meal and put it in the fridge. She didn't need it, couldn't throw it away, just couldn't leave it out there anymore. The emptiness felt heavy. 10 days later, she got a message from Rosa with a link to a Facebook post. It was a photo taken from across the street, showing the bakery, the bench, and the untouched paper bag. The caption read, Rosie's Bakery now feeding imaginary customers. Guess good PR is more important than common sense. The comments were worse. Marketing stunt. Bet she says it's for poor people and just throws it away. Feeding strays just makes more of them. Some people really need a reality check. Marisol turned off her phone. She didn't want to read any more. That night, she went to her small apartment above the bakery and opened the lowest drawer in her dresser, the one that held the last things her mother owned. Inside was a silver tin box, old but clean. She gently opened it and took out a worn leather notebook, the kind her mother had kept. Marisol turned to the page she had read many times. His face was weathered by sun and age but showed a calm strength. His dark blue dress uniform was perfect, with ribbons and medals that shone even in the dim light. He walked toward the door. The bell rang, loud in the sudden quiet. Everyone looked up, frozen. Is there a Marisol Rivera here? He asked, his voice steady. She stood behind the counter, her hands still wet from cleaning the glass. Her throat felt tight. Yes, she whispered. He came closer, his steps measured. I'm Lieutenant Colonel David Santos, U.S. Army Special Forces. I'm here because of a promise. He took a sealed envelope from his pocket. It looked official. This is from Ignacio Torres, the man you brought breakfast to each morning. Marisol's eyes grew wide. She gripped the counter. Colonel Santos went on. He was the father of Sergeant Mateo Torres, one of my best soldiers. Mateo died in action 2 months ago. After that, his father vanished. A deeper silence fell. He felt deep guilt, more than anyone knew. But 3 months ago, he wrote to me, not about his grief or his son, about you. He held up the envelope. In his last letter, written days before he died of heart failure, he asked me to find the woman in the red apron. He said, she didn't ask questions, she didn't pity me, she just gave me food every morning, like I mattered. Marisol could not speak, she barely breathed. In his words, the colonel said softly, you made him feel human again, tell her she gave a broken father hope. He stepped back, snapped to attention, and saluted her. Every soldier outside saluted, too, standing straight, honoring the woman behind the bakery counter. Tears fell silently down Marisol's cheeks. She hadn't saved a life in battle, she had just baked bread and poured coffee, without asking why. But that small act had reached a war zone. It had become a promise kept. News traveled fast. In 3 days, a photo of Marisol's tear-streaked face being saluted by soldiers was all over town and beyond. The paper ran the headline, a morning ritual that healed a father's heart. Marisol's routine didn't change. She still opened the bakery at 5:30 a.m., still wore her red apron, still kneaded dough with quiet care. But the people did. A young mother left a note, my brother is a Marine, thank you for remembering the families they leave behind. An older man placed a challenge coin by the register and nodded, Vietnam 74, first time I believed in people again. Some came to sit, to leave patches, medals, and prayers. Veterans, widows, children. Each had a story, and the bread gave them courage to share it. One morning, tucked among thank you cards, Marisol found a child's letter. Dear Miss Marisol. I'm Lucia, Ignacio's granddaughter. We didn't know he had passed until someone from the base called. Grandma said he talked about you often, how you saw him when no one else did. We found a box of every napkin and note you left, he kept them all. Thank you for being kind when he needed it most. Love, Lucia. Marisol framed the letter and placed it just where she could see it. A month later, Gustavo showed up early with a wooden sign. He quietly hung it under the old bakery logo. Bread for those who need it, no questions, no shame. That autumn morning, a teenage girl hesitated at the door. She shoved her hands into her hoodie and said, My dad's deployed, my mom cries a lot, do you still have any bread? Marisol smiled, we always have bread, and coffee, a seat, and someone to listen if you want to talk.